Looks like Todd's getting on. Now we'll find out if he got Mike's message. Okay, Mike, I think we're ready. If you are, or if you want to see if Todd's ready to lead the meeting.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm here now.
Todd. Did you get Mike's message, Todd?
I don't believe so.
I think he's not feeling super great, and he was wondering if you would run the meeting. Isn't that correct, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Let me pull up the agenda here. Sorry, I'm just on my phone trying to get it pulled up. Is everyone on that needs to be on?
Everybody but Mark, and then we have 3 guests from UAMPS on as well with us.
Okay. All right, great. Did everyone have a chance to look at the agenda?
Yep, yes.
Okay, anyone have any questions, concerns about the agenda?
Nope.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay,
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
okay, Randy to approve, Andy to second. And I can't say all that's on, but let's go ahead and start with you, Andy,
Yep, Palmer, aye.
and Randy,
Meyer, aye.
and Spriggs, aye. Is there anyone else on here as far as the board?
Dinsmore, aye.
Oh, Dinsmore, you are on, Mike.
I am
Okay.
on.
Okay, great. Okay, got that approved. How about the minutes for last meeting? Did everyone get a chance to look at those?
They look good as well.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll go ahead and motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Okay,
second
thanks.
it.
Okay, Mike, you want to go ahead and start?
Dinsmore, aye.
Okay, Andy,
Palmer, aye.
Randy,
Meyer, aye.
and Spriggs, aye. All right. Now,
New business.
just trying to see where we're at. No, the ordinance, so we got the ordinance that was sent out. And I'm trying to pull up the carbon-free power renewable resource guide.
You have a few guests that probably want to get to their stuff, so they don't have to stay for the whole meeting, but
Okay, new business. Recommendation of the city council. Are you taking care of that, Rick?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay, let's go ahead and turn the time over to you then.
Okay. While I'm sharing my screen, I looked on my laptop and we just this last hour set a new all-time high for the city at 47.1 megawatts. So we continue to grow. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
We do have 3 guests with us today. The first one's Doug Hunter, who's the CEO and General Manager of UAMPS. We have Mason Baker, who's the legal counsel for UAMPS, and Jackie Coombs, who's our Manager of Member Relations that keeps us all on track on both sides of UAMPS. So we appreciate all she does. I don't know if any of you want to give any introduction or just as we go along. I'm okay either way.
Fine, Rick. Thank you for letting us in. We'll just be here to answer questions or do as you desire.
Okay. These 3 are the experts in the CFPP project. So feel free to ask them questions. They are a great resource to us. The CFPP project's at another off-ramp, crossroads, next step, if you will. It's actually kind of an exciting step. It would get us going basically full bore to get the combined operating license application going to the NRC. So I'm just going to go through a few slides, some of them quick. Stop me if you have any concerns. Okay, it's working now. So I wanted to highlight just a few things that have changed since our last major presentations that we did last October. We had talked back then that there's 4 main agreements. At the time, the power sales contracts with various utilities had been signed, but there was 3 that were in the process of being signed at that time. So the first one is the Department of Energy multi-year cost share, which ended up providing us, it's just a little bit under $1.4 billion over a period of 9 years. And that represents about 25%, just a little bit under 25% of the cost of the project. Then there was the Development Cost Reimbursement Agreement, or the DCRA that we call it. That's between UAMPS and NuScale, which is mostly on the technology side of things. And that's where the 100% reimbursement through various phases or stages of the project comes in. And that's where that protection lies, is in that agreement. And then the EPC development agreement, which is between UAMPS and Fluor, who would be the constructor of the plant and responsible for cost estimates, balance of plant design, and things like that. And so all 3 of these additional agreements have all been signed since our last major decision point. A few other things have changed since then. NuScale, it wasn't really that long after we approved the last step that NuScale announced that they were able to get 77 megawatts out of each module instead of 60. So what that meant, if we went with the full 12 module plant, if you recall at the time we were thinking about a 720 total, that would have pushed us up to 924 megawatts. At that level, it was beyond what the current needs of UAMPS and the other interested utilities. So UAMPS did an exhaustive evaluation of looking at different configurations in conjunction with NuScale of a 8 module or a 6 module configuration. And it's been determined that the 6 module plant with a total output of 462 megawatts is the best approach going forward. One advantage of that is it'll make subscription easier to achieve. And we'll a little bit later on have Doug and Mason and Jackie address kind of where we're at on that. They were able to keep the overall project schedule the same, with the first module targeted for 2029, with the rest of the modules by 2030. Any questions on that so far? Okay. And when they scaled the plant down, you might think that all the costs would be proportionately reduced. However, there's some costs that are basically the same, whether or not we had 12 modules, 8 modules, or 6 modules. Things like the submittal and the preparation for the NRC COLA review probably changes some, but not significantly, by and how many modules. There's like the crane and where you would refuel each module, they basically stay the same. And so it's not quite an exact, if you dropped it by 40%, the costs don't necessarily go down exactly by 40%. And so in going through this process, the new target price that's in the agreement with NuScale is $58 a megawatt hour. Last time we talked, it was at 55, and those are the main reasons, is not everything proportionately shares down when you downscale the plant. The $58 is still very, very attractive, especially if you compare it to similar type resources that would be 24/7 dispatchable type resources. I've listed a couple there, other similar or advanced nuclear reactors, green hydrogen, storage with batteries. So we need to be careful when you see numbers that get thrown out there that not all resources are the same.
So is the $58, is that price locked in, or is it subject to changing in the future?
Well, for the purposes of this agreement, unless and correct me if I'm wrong, Doug and Mason, unless UAMPS was to change something significantly on our side, that is the price target in 2020 that we would move forward with.
That's correct.
Just in the construction industry, we're seeing unprecedented price increases across the board with everything. I know that would probably affect the building of the nuclear plant and other things. So I don't know. Do we feel like 58 is a realistic dollar amount at this point, or just unknown with the current market and how things are going more expensive all the time? Anyways, that's my concern. Is I just feel like everything across the board in the construction industry and the retail industry, everything is just, the prices are just going through the roof, and there's no end in sight. I'm in the roofing industry, and I can't even tell my customers what their price is going to be once the material's delivered at this point.
I'll maybe let Doug take a stab at that one. You're
Yeah,
more
sure.
familiar with how the ETC or ECTs are set up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Part of the movement in this is that Fluor Corporation, who will be the EPC, the engineering procurement construction contractor, has priced up. So due to the increased prices in construction, and we have a very detailed equipment and material list and things of that nature, and they moved everything up significantly, and that was another reason that we looked at the $58 tag. But more importantly, that is a set. If they come in with a higher price for whatever reason, as Rick was right on the money, if UAMPS doesn't request a change order, that then they have to cover that cost under the $58, or we have the right to walk away from the project if the price target exceeds that. So we believe that, one, it is realistic, $58 megawatt hour achievable. Actually, the price coming in is a couple of dollars less than that right now. This is just the target, and I think we're well protected against those type of increases. It'd be, and you're right. I mean, even if we didn't have these unprecedented price increases that have been going on in the industry right now, as you know, if you're in the roofing business, compressors, just trying to get compressors has been very difficult. Sheet metal has been very difficult. It's not just lumber and things of that nature. It's almost every item on the list, and so it's been covered. I believe we feel very comfortable, but that's not our risk on this side here, unless so let me just quickly say the levelized cost of energy is a 40-year average price, and that's what we're looking at. That's what that $58 represents. It's the average price over 40 years that comes into us on the test, and we run it through a very exhaustive, detailed model that captures everything you can possibly. In fact, there's nothing left out of the scope. That's what's taken us a while. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, I was just a little concerned with the freeze in Texas and how that had a trickle down effect to our pricing here in St. George, Utah. But I also feel that the carbon-free project is going to be the most competitive and aggressive price-wise out of all the other options. If prices of electricity is going to go up, I think these small modular units are going to be the most competitive in the market, don't you think?
I fully concur with your statement.
Yes, and in fact, I think they've looked, and I think the other thing, this project is, while it's a ways out, is still more mature than many of the projects that are out there. If you're looking at the green hydrogen, other advanced reactors, those kind of things, I think we're down the road much further than many of these other potential players that are out there. And to just give you a little bit of a perspective, and again, that 58's in 2020 dollars. I did a little bit of checking over this past year. Our average wholesale cost, if we take all of our projects and roll them up into a ball, our average costs are generally run in the 60s somewhere, anywhere from the 1 month to the low was like 58 and the high was like 72. So right now I would really like to have a resource that's predictable and stable at 58. It would be a great asset if we could have it today. So the sooner the better for me on this project, if we could only move it along that quick.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that point? I think that's a really good point, Randy. The last bullet point that we haven't read there, through this process of going to the 6 module and re-looking at the agreements, UAMPS still was able to maintain the 100% reimbursement through this next phase if the $58 isn't met. So that greatly reduces our risk. And this next phase of the project is projected to go through January of 2024 and a class 2 estimate. So that gets us, a more accurate estimate as we go along. And there'll be additional, we've got some slides. There'll be tests done along the way as well. We don't have to wait until 2024 to find out where we're going.
So there hasn't been any changes with the new administration in Washington. Everything is still on board. No concerns. Anything we need to know about there?
Not as far as I'm aware. I think both, believe it or not, Republicans and Democrats, this is one thing they've seemed to agree on and been supportive, clear back from Obama through Trump and now into Biden. I think they're all understanding the need for this type of resource to stabilize the grid. So just as a quick summary sheet of where we're at, the carbon-free power project will utilize small modular reactors using NuScale. Each of those reactors are rated at 77, so 6 of those total at 462, and the project will be located at the INL laboratory just out west of Idaho Falls. Washington currently has 15.4 megawatts of capacity allocated. And I put the parentheticals in there just to note that we're looking at with our high growth rates. In fact, with the peak today, we haven't theoretically got to the hot part of the year yet. We've already grown about 2 megawatts over last year. And so we'll be evaluating the possibility and the benefits of maybe even signing up for a little bit more, maybe taking it up to 20 megawatts instead of the 15 that we currently have. And we'll bring that back to you as we make some decisions on those regards. Again, the commercial operation date still at 2029. Highlighted the target price now is $58 and $20. And again, you got to keep in mind this is a 40 to even longer, 60, maybe even longer than that year product. Most of these are similar to what we presented back in October, but UAMPS has done a lot of work to de-risk as much as they possibly can to the members. And we appreciate their help with doing that. And one of the ways that they've done that is the DOE funding, the $1.4 billion. A large percentage of that is front-loaded, if you will, towards the front part of the project, and particularly during this COLA development phase. So, the COLA development overall cost estimate right now is about $309 million. Of that, only 67 million would be assigned to the UAMPS portion. The rest would come from the DOE and other cost share funds. And so that allows us to get further down the road with less risk as we make these decisions to keep going. And like was mentioned, that these funds are subject to appropriations, but so far there's been strong support from both parties and both houses of Congress to keep this moving forward. In fact, they've invested a lot of money in not only this technology, but other advanced reactors and as well as other potential resources that could help address the carbon issues that we're facing. Again, a reminder, we have the 100% reimbursement through this next phase available to us. And, as the project continues to mature, the risk level becomes less and our confidence level increases. And as I mentioned, there'll be multiple times, each month the project management committee gets a report. There'll be other economic competitive test runs through this process. So it's not something that we're just gonna, approve this next phase and then come back in January 2024 and talk about it. We'll be monitoring it throughout on a monthly basis, at least through that. The last bullet point there's no payment required from the utilities until commercial operation, and that'll be built into the $58 that we pay for the output, unless we withdraw or for some reason UAMPS cancels the project without a price test failure. then we would have to come up with the money to cover those costs. Any questions on those points?
Have there been any other groups that have signed on since we had our last meeting?
Well, you just led us right into the next slide, and I think I'll just briefly go through this and have Doug and Mason maybe give a little more detail. They're in the thick of negotiating and working with these other utilities. So right now, UAMPS has 103 megawatts of power sales contracts. Might note that our friends just a little bit up north, Beaver, rejoined the project last month. So that was great to have Beaver back. There's a Washington State utility that's signed a letter of intent for 150 megawatts. And I'll maybe have Doug explain the difference between the LOI and the PSC. There's an Arizona utility that's signed for an LOI for 25, and then there's 237 megawatts of interest pursuing LOIs. So right now, if they all were to come in, we would be above the 462, which I think would be a great problem to have at this point. You know, so I don't probably expect every single one to sign up, but that's a much more positive picture than we've previously had going into this. And so with that, maybe I'll have Doug and Mason maybe share what you're able to. Some of the identities of some of these utilities are not able to be specifically identified, so don't pin them down too hard on some of that.
Well, sure. Well, I'll tell you this. Let me just explain. The letter of intent is a non-binding letter of intent. It's just to go through due diligence process and to get an indicative amount that they might be interested in. So we can start looking at, this is really important for the current participants to understand if they want to increase their amount so that they have warning, and we'll be sending out an email here shortly, probably before the end of the week on this. So I'll go ahead and identify the utilities because these are public documents. We go through, they've asked us to not publicize it or put it in a press release, which is fully understandable as they're going through it. The Washington utility is Grant County Public Utility District. They're forecasting in the 2030s a shortage of over 300 megawatts. And they're also looking at a number of other resources, and so they've pegged us for 150 megawatts. That is moving along very well. We anticipate, in fact, I anticipate the LOIs and all the others that we'd be fully done by the end of the year. I really do think we'll have everything done. The Arizona utility is the Southwest Public Power Agency out of Phoenix. It's a group of 15, 17, I'm not exactly sure, different utilities, a lot like UAMPS, but they're in Arizona. And they have been toying around with going up to 100 megawatts. We're sort of limited on transmission capability in Arizona. And so we have been talking to others. That's part of these 7 other utilities that are in the 237 going on. And then we've had a number of other utilities in the area that have not signed the LOIs, but have them in front of them. We have 2 in Washington State, again, 2 more in Washington State that would total to a little less than 80 megawatts of indicative. They're right on the cusp of signing the LOI. What the LOI allows them to do, so just so you understand the difference here. So you signed a power sales contract. You're a member of UAMPS, you signed a power sales contract. And the concept for some of these others, they're looking at undivided ownership, if you will, and not being a member of UAMPS, which is be just fine. Go through, but they haven't made that decision yet, and that's part of what their due diligence is. And we'll move them into what we call a development agreement is the next step for those that want to pursue undivided ownership or some other relationship besides membership in UAMPS here shortly. And the main thing that's keeping them from signing today is to make sure that we have the transmission arrangements totally secured. And we're in the process of doing that, and everybody's very confident that's going to happen, but we're going through. So, yeah, and actually that's just with, since, so, you know, Rick, we met in Orlando, this is, I could actually increase this number by almost over 100 megawatts more of additional interest. I think it was Randy mentioned what happened in February in Texas. That's got a lot of people's attention, and people are starting to look to the future and not seeing a lot of capacity being built. And we're one of the few that are in the planning horizon to get it done. So we went through. But I'd be more willing to think we're shooting to have everything hopefully signed up by the end of the year if you go through. But that's why the 100% reimbursement through this phase is really important to us as we go through, is that we can pursue it at less than a full subscription level and still be, you know, in safe territory, if you will. I think if that answers, that provides enough explanation, I can go further if you like.
And their terms that they sign up for are the same as what we've signed up for.
Yes, the development agreement that we're looking at would go through that would actually require them to be obligated, just like you, are identical. The difference is it ends through the development phase. So what we call final notice to proceed is a covenant inside the power sales contract that requires us to come back to the governing bodies of the power sales contract entities, you, Washington City, to make a final decision by the governing body to go into construction. And the development agreement will have the same requirements and covenants. So they'll be obligated for costs up through that period of time. You know, if they were to drop out at FNTP, they will owe us money, you know, right, for their share. We're also allowing them to bring money. And so that's the other thing right there in this phase where you don't have to, right? You're a part of UAMPS, we're just capitalizing it through. If they wanted to go off and do their own financing and bring their money, then they would not owe us anything. We'd already have the money, right? It'd already be in place. And if they were to leave, they do not get a refund or anything of that nature. So yeah, I you know, it's not going to be word for word identical. I don't want to portray that, but for all practical purposes, they're exactly the same as the power sales contracts that that you've signed. Yeah.
Any other questions on subscription side? I think this has been really positive, and like Doug mentioned, it seems to be changing much more rapidly than it had for quite a while. Anything you want to add, Mason?
No, I think Doug has covered it. Happy to stand ready for any other questions.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so again, the next step of the project is going to be to develop the combined construction operating licensing application to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the NRC. And so this resolution that we have before you and would take to the council would go through up to the point of submitting those documents for review by the NRC, which is projected to be January of 2024. One of the things that's, I don't know if driving's the right word, but there's an opportunity right now during this, before winter hits in Idaho, to do some critical seismic work and investigation up there on the site. And it can be done in conjunction with other work being done on other projects at the INL site, which will save the project costs. So if we can get the funds to be able to proceed with that, you know, we'll be able to save some money just by working with other work that's going on at the INL site. And of course, during this period of time, information design will be refined. And as I mentioned before, there's at least 3 more ECT runs along the way that we'll be monitoring how well they're doing on the $58. And, you know, if it was to fail, at the end of this year, then, we'd have that decision to make. But we'd be subject to that full reimbursement, which is a great thing on each of these steps. And again, as you could tell from Doug and Mason and Jackie's, a lot of their time is spent on getting additional participants and getting the subscription finalized on the project. And as additional participants come in, and you'll see it on a slide here in just a minute, our exposure, if you will, or cost commitment will be reduced proportionately as they come in. And so based on the current subscription levels, which is just UAMPS members that have signed the power sales contracts, our members, or our percentage is just under 15%, which is basically, if you take 15 megawatts out of the 100 total, that's, how the calculation works on that. And of that $67 million that's UAMP's responsibility, that would potentially, if the wheels were to fall off on January of 2024 and we were to back out, then we'd be subject potentially up to the $10.1 million that's shown. Don't panic on that. And we would recommend, as part of this resolution and how it's written, because last time, if you remember, people changed their position and numbers would go up and down. The resolution has language up to a $1.5 million cost share commitment. When we're successful in getting the full subscription to the project, Washington's share will drop to 3.3% or $2.1 million. And I think that's the number that we really need to focus in on and understand, because the project's not going to move forward past these other benchmarks if we don't have the subscription that's needed to move it forward. And again, all these amounts are included in the $58, and payment by the city is only if we withdraw by ourselves for convenience, or if UAMPS were as a group to do it. So if NuScale was still meeting the $58 and for whatever reason we decided to walk away, that would be the amount that we'd be subject to. And again, the second, or the first and the third bullet points show, as people sign up and come in, the dramatic change that makes in our percentage share. And as I mentioned before, the $58 is very attractive, and I really don't see another product out there that's of similar capabilities, and certainly not in that price target. Any questions on that?
So in your experience, there's nothing that you could potentially see right now that would cause us to withdraw for any reason? I mean, the only reason would be is if we were able to get power for less, is the only thing I can think of. Is there something else I'm missing?
If by chance, I mean, I would, to be blunt, if the political winds of the city council were to change for some reason right now, I think we have a very supportive city council and a very supportive power board for the project. To me, that would be the most unpredictable part. You know, if the nature of the council changed and people were against nuclear in general. But as far as a financial looking forward, I don't see why we wouldn't continue, just because it is very cost competitive. It's competitive if we had it today. And, you know, you look in the future, we all know prices will rise. It will still be very, very competitive at that point in time. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Anyone else have any questions or concerns? There was a little bit of controversy there for a little while. Seemed like it was more prominent for a bit. Where has there been any more controversy or groups or organizations that have come out against this?
I think in general, and again, Doug and Mason can weigh in, I think overall on the national level, I think more and more groups are becoming more supportive of nuclear technology, as well as just realizing some of the events that happen in California, Texas. I think it's really highlighted the need for a stable resource to be there on the system. Any other comments on that, Mason or Doug, what you're seeing? You have a broader view?
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, really, to be blunt about it, we've seen more Democrats get in line supporting nuclear over the last several years, because at the federal level, there is recognition that nuclear needs to be part of the equation to decarbonize. So we are seeing many more Democrats join. And as Rick already alluded to, we started this process under the Obama administration, went through the Trump administration, and now working through the Biden administration. So we're seeing more and more support, which we think is a good thing. And it's we're still going to have the same opponents that historically have been against nuclear, and that's sort of their those are their issues. But I think we're seeing more groups coming to line to support nuclear because they recognize all the issues associated with trying to decarbonize the electric sector.
And some of the proposals that are out there, for the Biden administration, when we've talked at previous meetings, they're pushing or trying to get something passed that would say, the electric sector has to be carbon free by 2035. And that's a very, very aggressive type stance to, even propose out there. And you can see how long it takes to get some of these projects to materialize. I think that's a very lofty goal if it is set. But I don't see anything that right now that should dissuade us from proceeding forward. So what we're actually looking for or asking as staff, for you as a power board to recommend to the city council to approve this resolution and participating in the project, at least through the class 2 estimate and the COLA development phase. And then so these types of meetings are going to be taking place over the 28 different members that are currently signed up over the next couple of weeks. And again, some of the numbers may shift a little based on what different people do for different reasons. However, I must say, and again, Doug and Mason can correct me, but I don't sense that there's the uncertainty. I think the current members that we have are much more solid as a group for the project than the few that dropped out last time. Not saying that somebody couldn't change their mind, but I don't feel the same vibe, if you will, that we did last time. And that's really kind of it, unless you have more questions for myself or the UAMP staff.
So are you looking, is this a recommendation you're looking for now? when is this going through? When is this going to be proposed to the city council?
We've got it scheduled for July 14th, so a week from tomorrow. It would go to the city council. I do basically the same presentation at a work session. In fact, Doug's planning on being here physically for that meeting. And of course, we would love any support that if you're able to attend and show your support, that would be great as well. But yeah, I would go through, again, we're trying to catch that summer that we still have in Idaho to do some of that work. Otherwise, it shifts all that work basically back 9 months or so because they can't do it during the winter.
Well, I know Randy and Mike and I have been following this for a few years now, and we learned quite a bit in our last convention up there in Jackson Hole, which I appreciated. So Andy, do you have any questions since you're a little newer to the Power Board? Anything that you can think of?
No, I don't have any questions. I mean, this is all, and I know you all have been through this process, not been through the process, currently going through the process, but are a little more educated, more experienced with this. It seems to me that this is our best route for the future, especially with the growth that we're seeing locally. And so what I've seen and experienced so far is this seems like a great project to move forward with. So I'm all on board.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I personally don't have any questions or concerns. Do we have a motion for recommendation to the city council?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and motion to move forward and to pass it along to the city council.
I'll second it.
Okay. Mike, you want to start us off?
Dinsmore, aye.
Andy?
Meyer,
Oh, go ahead, Randy.
Meyer, aye.
Palmer, aye.
And Spriggs, aye. Appreciate your time in going through this again. I think probably feel a little more comfortable with it than the last time we met, when there were a few of the organizations that were a little more hesitant. So I'm excited with the direction it's taking and look forward to seeing it move forward. I'm kind of like Randy. I just wish it would move forward a little quicker, as I'm sure Doug that you are as well. But it'll be fun to watch it move forward.
Yeah, well, thank you. We're going to move it as quickly as we can. There's still possibility there could be some, expedited aspects to it. It really depends on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as well. But we really appreciate your support. And I'll just say in passing or closing, I anticipate that some of those cities that left will come back, just like Beaver. So, because you guys are very prescient. That's that this is the only thing that's really sitting on the horizon, and it's totally, to the extent we can, de-risk it. And and if I could too, I really appreciate Rick's diligence in following this and understanding the project. You've got a really good representative there, and Jeremy, obviously, in his previous life was the head guy for Blanding. And so he's got there. I mean, it's something I just really appreciate of the members when they really pay attention and try and understand, regardless of which way they go on a project. I always feel good if they understand it and make the best decision, in this case for Washington City, whatever that may be, whether it's for or against. That's what we like in UAMPS, and we really do appreciate it. And I'm glad, hopefully you can make it to Tahoe for it and come in. We're going to have some really good speakers down in Tahoe again. That's the essence of that, is to bring in the appointed and elected officials to so they can help Jeremy and Rick out, and you got more knowledge base. So we'd hope to see you down there in August. Thanks.
That's the plan. Yes, thank you. Appreciate you bringing that up. That's where I get a lot of my comfort level, I think, with this, is knowing that Rick is on top of it and understands it completely, because I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than what we know, as well as Jeremy. So I appreciate you saying that.
And I have to maybe apologize for a minute. I was going to give Jeremy a chance to weigh in a little bit or give his thoughts if he's able and still there.
Of course, I'm still here, but everything was going along so well, and you've done such a good job. I didn't think I needed to extend the meeting, but I absolutely share in the same sentiment that Todd had. I think that this is all really positive news. It's a positive step forward. To see the subscription coming is what we've been hoping for a year now. So really excited about that. And hopefully we see it just continue to move forward. But I have nothing but positivity for the project. And again, I don't see anything else that makes as much sense as this does. And the pricing is still really, really good. So Rick and I have talked a little bit about adding to our allotment. And I think that just shows the strength of the project in my mind. So that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. And I guess we can excuse the UAMPS folks unless they have a real burning desire to hang out. They certainly are welcome, but I'm betting you have other stuff to do.
Thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
All right, I guess we can move on to the next recommendation to City Council to adopt an updated ordinance 2009 to 01. Is that, and that'll be Nikki, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Nikki, we will turn the time over to you.
All right. So I included it last time. Mike just suggested that we change some of the wording on the form, I think, and the exhibit paper from, I think it used to say up to date. So we just changed it to that must be renewed. And
Do you have that, Nikki? I can bring it up if.
yeah, I think it's here. Let me see if I might be able to share it. Is that working?
Looks like it.
Okay. So this is the one I already made the changes on. I apologize. I don't have the other version pulled up, but so we changed Tara's name. She's our new city recorder. And the other change was here, it's it used to say this form must be brought up to date, and we changed it to renewed to match both this and also the medical form now says brought up to date as well. The form must be, I'm sorry, instead of saying up to date, it says must be renewed. So those are the changes, and if we're good with them, then we'll try to get it approved by City Council.
So Nikki, this is Jeremy.
Yes.
Do you have any idea of how many people use the service currently? How many are?
Say less than 10 right now. It's not a big thing that we get requested. From my understanding, COVID brought in a few more, but all right, I can't see you guys, so I'm gonna do that. The most recent one was probably within the last month, and most of the time they're short-term, whether they're hospice or just a temporary medical problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they do try to make contact if they show up on the days for non-payment. We always make sure somebody's trying to reach them before anything's done. So, but.
That's really the main gist of the program, is we make an extra effort, if you will, to make sure they're aware. It doesn't give them a free pass to not pay.
And does it work as well, not just for non-payment, but if we knew we were having a planned outage in a certain area, we may make a special effort to connect with those people who have
Yeah, we could certainly do that. I was just looking it up right now. There's 11 that are showing active. Some of those probably haven't been updated very recent, which is what kind of started this process, so that we can get the most current list though. So yeah, I could definitely share them with Wayne or with Tyler. So when we have outages that are planned or whatever, we'll make sure we don't have any of them in the area.
And for planned
Need us to
outages,
approve that?
we do door knockers and those kind of things, handouts anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, Rick, I don't know if you need this. About a half hour ago, I got kicked off the Zoom call because the power went out where I was at.
Yeah, I have sent a message out on Facebook. There's an outage around 300 West north of Telegraph. So
yeah,
I'm sorry, Randy.
That's all right.
That's not good on a power board meeting.
Yeah.
I think it was specific to Randy's house. We wanted to kind of just,
Yeah, appreciate that.
yeah, so you could experience it. Yeah, I think we do need a recommendation unless anyone else has any questions. I do like the change. I think renewed is a little clearer on what needs to happen. They realize it's not indefinite, that they need to renew it. But anyone else have any other questions, changes, concerns?
No?
No,
Okay, go ahead and look for a recommendation.
I'll recommend to approve the document.
Okay, Randy.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay, Andy second. Mike, you want to start?
Dinsmore, aye.
Okay, Andy,
Palmer, aye.
Randy,
Meyer, aye.
and Spriggs, aye. Thank you. Appreciate that, Nikki.
No problem.
And it looks like you're next on the agenda as well. So we'll just move right forward with the renewable resource guide.
All right. So Rick might be able to explain a little more, but my understanding is when the net metering ordinance was brought to them, they wanted some type of information. Is that right, Rick? To be
Yeah, the council, they didn't really have any, in fact, that'll go before for approval next week as well. But when we discussed what you guys have already previously recommended, they requested to have a document that would maybe educate people, give them some tools or questions to think about and those kind of things. And so this, I had talked with Nikki and she's put this together. I would say it's in a draft form. And so we're looking for your input of suggestions of what we might include.
right. It'll be more of a document. Right now it's more like slides, but kind of gathered some information from other utility companies around and looked what they shared. This graph is the same one that we've currently used. Kind of just goes through and explains how solar works, what happens, or how the electricity is generated. Explains them to know, kind of really educate themselves when they're trying to get the solar power, how much they're going to use their roof, if it can handle it, how much they can spend. Anyway, kind of just goes through and gives them some information and things to ask the companies, understanding the agreement that they're signing, just some suggested questions for them to ask. And then the last slide is of our process for how we require them to go about getting the solar power.
And so on this, what would like is if you could review this and again, provide us comments, say, what about this or that? And then we can, at least next week, I don't think it'll be ready for the council to see this, when we ask for approval on that, we can at least let them know this is in the works as per their request. And I think Nikki's done a great job on getting this set up and collecting information from other sources.
And I'll get it emailed out so you guys can look it over.
Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. Regular business, Rick, if you want to take that.
Okay, try to be brief as I can on just mostly their normal reporting. We continue obviously to see lots of growth in the city. So we're working with the new housing developments, the new hospital. We've had some meetings or exchange of information with them. As I mentioned previous, I had in here that we set a new all-time system peak on June 18th, but that got superseded by an hour ago. And it may be slightly higher this last hour. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but we continue to grow. Pricing, particularly back on June 17th and 18th, was pretty high in the $350 a megawatt hour range. But most of the time during these, it's been pretty hot since then. They've been running during the peak times in the 100 to 150 range. So it's probably not quite as bad wholesale pricing so far as a lot of people had feared, but it's still definitely pricey power for those peak hours from about 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. As far as our generation operation, for June, we ran them 28 out of 30 days. Mike and Jake have been splitting those duties and doing a great job. We did have, for the month of June, that was the single highest amount of kilowatt hours generated by the units since they were installed. And comparing the cost to run the units versus what the average wholesale market price is, they estimate it's about $100,000 savings in June that they were able to achieve. And we would anticipate that the units will run virtually every day from now till through the end of August, unless we get a real cool snap, which I don't think is on anybody's horizon that I've seen. And so they're running as we speak. If you were here, you could hear a little drone in the background with the engines running. So as far as projects go, the Buena Vista Fiber project we talked about last month, it's now complete. As far as the physical installation, we still need to do the transfer of the communication from the radio to the fiber, and that's primarily because Jake's focus has been on the generation and hasn't been able to break away to take care of that. We created a new tie circuit between a couple circuits from our Main Street substation, and that works complete. And they'll probably do the load transfers that we've anticipated there later this week, probably Thursday, Friday. Tomorrow is shut off, so they'll be tied up with that. And that's, we have had, let me look at Wayne's operations report. We've done training on Trent safety, harassment training that we do annually. Hopefully you've noticed the new banners on Telegraph and Main Street. The crew put those up last week. I think they look really nice, and I think the city likes having that, and our idea is we'll take one banner down and put a new one up and have 4 or 5 sets of banners, and so that way we can not have to go back multiple times. And so I think that'll be a great approach. We passed, if you will, our annual audit on our inventory. That the auditors actually, the auditing company didn't come out. They actually just had us do an internal audit with our own accounting, and they said that's a good positive sign if they're not worried enough to come out on their own. So we did that and didn't really find any issues. The crews have been, they've patrolled the 2 well lines that go up through the habitat and are making some repairs up there to make sure we can do what we can to prevent any fires. We don't want to start one up there. In fact, there'll be adding some bird protection on poles that have transformers and underground risers to help reduce the chances of that. The crews have been changing out various poles, underground pieces of equipment over the last few weeks. And again, just trying to identify where potential problems could occur and hopefully get them solved before they happen. For the summer, it's been relatively quiet, other than apparently the outage we just heard about. We've had a couple transformers go bad. We did have a cable that's probably 30 to 40 years old go bad over by the Texaco off of exit 10 last week that took that circuit that fed that area out for about 3 hours. That's been our single biggest issue. Again, I'm not sure what this one tonight is, but the crews always do a great job. Within 10 minutes, we had the first guy on site for that one last week. And within an hour, we basically had the whole crew there trying to, locate the problem piece of cable so we could get it isolated and get people back on. So that's a quick nutshell on what we've been doing locally. Any questions on that?
Do we have any concerns with the growth? I mean, you're saying that we're reaching record numbers with our generation and things, yet we continue to see building and unprecedented numbers as far as building. As far as the power board, is there anything that we should be concerned about? Is there anything that you are concerned about as far as the growth? We don't really have any input with that, but I'm just curious more than anything.
I think, we do have some concerns, and I'll report it a little bit in the UAMPS report, but we can jump to that. The Central St. George project, where we kind of interface with Rocky Mountain, there's a few points there that since the whole county comes through a common corridor, there's concerns there, and we, as UAMPS and Deseret with Dixie and Garcane, we continue to do joint studies and keep pressure on them, for lack of a better term, to make sure they're addressing those needs. System-wise, that's probably my biggest concern. As far as our own internal distribution, I think have been able to stay ahead of any issues with that. Of course, if we have the neatest toaster, if your extension cord to the supply is bad, the toaster doesn't do you much good. So that's why we are working diligently to make sure things are in front of Rocky Mountain. My biggest concern going forward, I think, is what we just talked about with the CFPP, is our wholesale resources and keeping those costs and finding resources that are cost effective and will be there when we need them. Because like I said, we can, even if we sign up for another 5 in that project, last year we grew almost 6. So that's 1 year of growth. And of course, that's only during that peak month. It doesn't last significant a number of hours in the year. And so we got to kind of balance that. You can't always just chase just that peak, but it's definitely an indication of so that's probably what keeps me up at night more than anything, is the resource side. The physical side, I think we can deal with. on different fronts. So that's my biggest concern of that.
Okay.
And you guys have been very supportive of those efforts, and I really appreciate that, because if we didn't have that support, and then on you know, and the CFPP is really an innovative project. If we didn't have that support, we'd be really scrambling to try to figure out how to cover those resources or those loads resource wise.
Rick, you'll have to forgive me. I just have been wondering about this issue time and time again, and I'd like to just kind of express some of my fears moving forward, not just with Power Board, but just as a community as a whole. I almost feel like we're Pearl Harbor before the Japanese attack, you know, feeling very comfortable and everything's hunky-dory. But you know, just with these price increases that we've been seeing, unprecedented. I mean, I've been in the industry for 30 years, and I mean, every week there's a new letter coming out from a different manufacturer talking about price increases, and you know, now we're seeing a lot of fast food restaurants and other low income places that have no employees working, and so they're shutting down their stores early, or they're only drive through only and things like that. So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future, but I kind of live by the philosophy that you know, prepare for the worst and expect the best, and that's what I hope to do. But I just wonder why we're not. For me, solar would be kind of a resource that's in our backyard that we would have control over. Like in my roofing company, I don't like to subcontract things out where I'm out of control of whether they're going to show up or not. And that's kind of how I feel with some of these resources or other projects that we don't have any control over it. And if something catastrophic were to happen with the power grid and things like that, then we're just held hostage to all these other power groups, to whether or not we have power or what we pay for the power. And you know, power is just such a critical part of life now, with all the electronics and computers. And I mean, people's businesses and stuff would just completely shut down if we didn't have the power resources available to us. So I apologize for being you know, tooting my horn and just trying to. I'm not trying to be an alarmist at all, but I'm just wondering, would it not be a good idea to encourage the public to get solar on their homes, and then to have it feed back into the grid after, you know, what they use in their own homes? Especially, you know, I'm looking at it 6:30 tonight, and we're in the peak of the power. If the sun's still out, wouldn't it be helping to, you know, as a city of Washington, if we were to have that power grid helping us out?
Yes, it would, and I think we do have an incentive for them to do that. I mean, I don't think we can provide, you know, retail rates year round, you know, type reimbursements, but I mean, that is out there. I mean, they certainly can. You know, if we were to in lieu of doing like rebates or something like that, I would try to find a home for a city-owned facility. But again, real estate, solar uses a lot of real estate, and you know, the costs for that become very difficult. And that's one reason why we do have 2 solar projects coming on next year. They are power purchase agreements. I think some of those outfits can take advantage of tax advantages that we can't. And so it makes some of their power purchase agreement pricing very attractive. And that's why we pursued those. UAMPS continues to look at other options as well. I don't know that.
And I haven't been in the loop that much, so you know, I'm just an outsider looking in at the industry. But There's companies like Solar City that where the resident doesn't even pay for the solar. They just allow the utility to put the solar on their property, and then it generates, the power for the city and gives the customer a reduced rate. Have we ever looked at something like that?
I haven't. I mean, to be honest, again, you'd be chasing probably literally hundreds of very small generators, if you will. And it does create other complications in looking for wholesale resources, because you got to find one now instead of 4 or 5 hours long. You got to find one that's only 1 or 2 hours when the sun goes down and the heat's still there. And we've done studies on the system down here that there's actually a secondary peak about 8:30, and it's about 85% of the full peak, if you will, that occurs around 6 o'clock, and that's occurring because of the solar products that come in to Red Butte that are located up by Newcastle area. There's 2 or 3 large solar projects up there that feed into that bus, and it does become a system operational issue. Again, they're actually studying 2 separate peaks now in our study group, just because of the solar there. And so it addresses and helps in some regards, but it also has a set of baggage that comes with it too. But we certainly, can look into different options, and I think anything's on the table at this point, but it has to make a sense there. So
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
no problem. Appreciate your input.
Okay, let's go ahead and move into the UAMPS report. Right.
Okay. Our June meetings were held in Orlando in conjunction with the APPA National Conference, and I was able to attend that. Our meetings for UAMPS were pretty concise because we had limited time between when the conference got out and when the flight left to leave. So, but the conference was really good. Some of the things that Randy brought up and we've discussed before were one of the main topics for that conference. One of the big things, and I actually went into a separate, they call it a pre-conference class that was held on the Sunday before. And one of the topics there was energy storage in various forms, either battery, pumped hydro, thermal storage. There's a lot of technologies out there that, people are starting to look at. I think if you can economically couple battery storage with like solar or even wind, that will help. Most battery storage projects are targeting a 4-hour period to try to get it over that secondary peak. So we're keeping an eye on that. One of the projects we're actually looking at with Enchant through UAMPS does have a battery component. But right now that battery component is very pricey, and you pay for that battery component 12 months of the year, kind of like to a certain extent that we do with our generators here. And we only need them for a few hours during the summer period. And so again, it's trying to figure out what that economic balance is for those short durations. But Todd probably has as much experience as anybody on battery and how that's working. It doesn't change the total output from the system, but allows you to shift when that is utilized. There was a lot of discussion at the conference on the clean energy standards, and we've hit on that. However, they brought up one new term on the federal level called environmental justice that I hadn't heard before, but now they're requiring the federal government to, when different legislation comes out, they have to study the economic impact. And so they have to now include racial and other injustices that may be considered when policies are made. So does this affect a low-income housing? For example, there's a member of UAMPS that I was talking to their director, and they have a very vocal group of people that have come in and said, we don't care what it costs, we want 100% green. Well, he's also got a lot of customers that do care what it costs, and he has to look out for them. And so that was a term I hadn't heard before. Maybe some of you have, but environmental justice has to be considered with these policies now.
That also mean if, sorry, go ahead.
That sounds ominous to me, but just the term environmental justice sounds
Yep.
a little concerning.
Like, I kind of heard that if you're using like coal plants for your power output, that they're going to assess a penalty to for the use of not clean energy. So
Yes, that's there, and that's something we watch really closely. I mean, UAMPS has, not Washington City, but there are members that are involved with coal plants, and so they watch that closely. But our natural gas plants at Payson and here at the Gen plant, obviously they're cleaner per kilowatt hour than coal, but that same type of carbon tax is a term that gets thrown out there, or the social cost of carbon that they will, and that's some of the proposals that are out there. And that's why I would be fairly hesitant to, at this point, to add a lot of carbon-based resources for this reason. Is there's a lot of, we can't spend a bunch of money on another generating unit and in 2 or 3 years not be able to run it. It doesn't make economic sense. So it makes it very difficult. But that was again, those things that you brought up are right on what was talked about. Probably half of the sessions at the conference talked about these same issues. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of definitive answers out there, but there's a lot of awareness and what that might mean for the industry.
So with the carbon-free project that's coming up, what percentage of our usage will that cover?
Well, during certain time of the year, it would be, substantial, probably in the 75% range. During the peak time of year, by the time 2030 comes around, I suspect it'll be about a third. And again, our load goes up and down during the day, and that's going to be more of a base load that's going to sit there 24/7.
Yeah.
So total kilowatt hours, I would guess during the summer, it may be 40, 50%, something like that.
Yeah.
And other times of the year, it'll be, during nighttime, during the shoulder months when you're not heating or air conditioning, you could potentially even go slightly long, meaning you have more than you need. But that's the balancing act, trying to figure out where to come that balance. Where is that balance point? Some of the other things they talked about is, with uncertainty in the industry on different technologies, being proactive instead of reactive, and be willing to think a little differently. And, that's why I think Randy's ideas and thoughts are good to think about. Unfortunately, a lot of these, they can be pretty pricey to go down that road. So we just need to, make smart decisions. And UAMPS has even started having some discussions with Siemens about possibly eventually converting the Nebo plant to hydrogen, for these same reasons we're talking about. If there is a carbon tax at some point, does it make sense to do that? And there's companies out there looking at existing fleet of turbines. Can they be safely run on hydrogen fuel or some sort of a mixture? And so there's lots of things out there that are being looked at. Doug made his plug, if you will, for the retreat next month, or the UAMPS annual meeting next month in Squaw Valley, Lake Tahoe area. I think Randy and Todd are going to be able to go. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
I'm planning on it.
Mhm.
And I think Nikki's got most of the arrangements. I don't know if she touched base with you, Todd. So if you need any help there, let Nikki know and we'll help you with that.
Yeah.
I got his paperwork and submitted all of that today, so I can.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, you're ahead of me as usual, so that's great.
Thanks, Nikki.
And it's not too late. If somebody else has a change of ability, just let us know.
Mike, are you going to be able to join us?
No, they threw another football game in, so
Hmm.
Tyson's got a football game that week.
We can both attend Spirit, Mike, because I'll be there too.
One question I had, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but my wife's not going to be able to come with me, but my brother's interested in coming. Is that a possibility for him to attend the conference and share the hotel with me?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Of course, his transportation costs would have to be covered by you or him.
Yeah.
As far as the motel, it'll be the same either way. And I think she's got it worked out that you'll share a car with some of the other people going from the council and staff.
Would he be able to attend the conference?
As far as I know, they can. Just
Okay.
sign them up for the different classes and stuff, like you did on the website.
Yeah, just when you had a guest, it didn't give you the option to include him it was just for the dinners and the
Okay,
activities that you could have signed him to.
we can ask Jackie. Do you know, Jeremy, by any chance, what the policy is in that?
I don't, but I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to attend the conference. Usually people that come that aren't on the power board like to just play.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't want to go to any meetings. She wants to go do her thing. So
Yep. So we'll ask Jackie and get back with you, Randy, on that.
Okay, thanks.
On the Central St. George project, we touched base on some of those concerns. One thing that Rachel with UAMPS was able to arrange last week on July 1st was a meeting with the area utilities with the area vice president from Rocky Mountain, Pete Singh. And we had a good discussion with him. We were pretty blunt with him on some of the concerns and issues or problems we've had. And I felt like it was a very good meeting. And so we'll see how that plays out. But he understood our concerns, and I think we'll see some progress there. And again, involving further up the food chain of Rocky Mountain and the grid ops on our study efforts, I think we're seeing some improvement there. They've already moved the one transformer installation up a couple of years. It's still a ways out at 2026, but they had it out at 2028. So again, that's part of keeping the pressure. And we have the ability between UAMPS and Deseret to study the system and say, you have these problems, and it puts them in a spot where they have to really look at it closely. So I think those efforts have been very worthwhile. Our Nebo project there in Payson, that plant, between the load levels and power prices, it's basically been running 24/7 at full output for the last couple of weeks at least. And I anticipate it will be, again, for the same reasons, it'll continue to run virtually nonstop for the next couple months. So unless they had some issue come up where it dropped off. Our Vail plant's doing well. It keeps us, it's just a little bit under a megawatt, 800 to 900 kilowatts. And it plugs along really good on that. I think we've talked about a lot of the clean energy standards, and the one proposal, I think, is what Randy was referring to. There's a social cost of carbon term that you'll see thrown out there now. And the initial proposal was $51 a ton. Again, it's a kind of a carbon tax in a little different package or different name, but it's all doing the same, trying to do the same thing. On the future potential projects, again, the NTUA solar and the Steel solar are both scheduled at different times next year to come online. The NTUA one we're hoping to be online before next summer. And that'll give us some really good data as far as the large solar of how that plays in with our overall resource mix as well. And then Steel solar will be at the latter end of next year. The Enchant project that there's a group that's going to buy or hopes to buy the San Juan power plant that's in New Mexico, and they want to install a carbon capture feature on that. And so UAMPS is negotiating, working with them right now. The power prices look good in the mid 30s. But there's still quite a bit of work they've got to do to buy the plant. And so we're waiting for a power purchase agreement from them, and we'll evaluate that. And again, it's a little, even though it's a carbon capture on a coal plant, it's not 100% carbon free. It still has some emissions. It greatly reduces it. So we need to kind of evaluate how that fits with the clean energy standard or potential clean energy standards that they may throw out there. There's another, I mentioned the solar project with battery that's in that same San Juan area of New Mexico. Again, they're working out some transmission issues, trying to get a little clearer picture on what the battery costs could be. Right now, they've said we could utilize it or basically buy into the battery or not do the battery. Initial numbers made if you bought the battery portion, it was very expensive resource. If it was just the solar, it was fairly similar to the other two solars that we've signed up for. The Muddy Creek Heat Recovery Project would be located in Wyoming, and it uses basically the same technology as Vail, which is waste heat off of a gas compressor. The pricing in that right now looks like it's in the mid 50s or low 50s. Again, a question mark with that is I'm not sure, and nobody's sure right now, how a project like that would be viewed in these clean energy standards, because it is waste heat that you're recovering, but the heat is generated by burning fossil fuel. And so it's probably not green and probably not black, so it's some sort of brown power. I don't know exactly what color they would assign to it, but it's so those are things we just have to be aware of going forward. And UAMPS has reported they continue to evaluate. I guess they get proposals from wind suppliers and other solar projects in the state on an ongoing basis. So everybody's aware of the drought. So our We have just a little bit of hydro from the Colorado River project, but WAPA, who administers that, is potentially has some issues on meeting their obligations, just because of the low water in Lake Powell and the other lakes on the river. The other project that potentially could develop into something is the Horse Butte Wind number 2. They're looking at some issues with possibly repowering the Horse Butte 1 and how that would work out. So I don't have a lot to report other than, again, mainly that we are looking at wind and solar and several different technologies that are out there to try to get as balanced a portfolio as we can. And I think I've said before, I think I would rather have solar than wind because I can predict at least when that possibly could be there. Wind tends to be frustrating at times. When we peak, a lot of times it's because there's a high pressure, no storms, and that's the time that there's no wind. And so when we need it most, it's not there. And that's the bigger challenge with wind. But at least solar, I know it'll be during daylight hours and can plan accordingly for that. So, and I think we covered all that we needed to, and maybe even a little more on the CFPP. And I think the next decision on that would be whether we sign up for a little bit more or not. And I think, as far as I know, the council will be supportive of your recommendation.
When does that council meeting again? Did you say the 14th?
The 14th, the work session is at 4:30, and that will be first on the agenda at 4:30. Because Doug, who was on the call tonight, he's actually will be with us at 4:30. When he gets done here, he goes over to Santa Clara and does the same support over there for Santa Clara.
So it would be beneficial for the power board to show up to the council meeting, right?
I think it would be terrific if you're able to make that work in your schedule, because then they can see that you're engaged and I think it helps them in knowing that you've looked at it and as supportive of it as well. I think it helps them in their decisions. So if any or all of you are able, that would be terrific.
Yeah, I agree.
So 4:30, City Council chambers. I guess we should have a Zoom if somebody wanted to do it Zoom wise. That's a possibility as well.
So 4:30, we are invited to that planning. Right. Okay.
And that's at the work session, and then the actual adoption would be in the main session later. And I wouldn't even have a guess of what time that would be. But I think any questions or discussion will come out of that 4:30 meeting.
Sounds good.
So that's all I have, unless you have any more questions or concerns.
I was just looking at the agenda, and it says, looks like on our right under Washington City, our motto is "Where Dixie Begins." Are we going to have to change that?
I'll let Jeremy take that one. I think the new one is "Feels Like Home," but
Yeah, that might just need to be updated. I'll look at that.
So yeah, officially we use both, but the "Feels Like Home" has been over a dozen years we've been using that motto. So we won't discuss necessarily which one needs to be prioritized over another. That's another hour.
Yeah. This has already gone a little longer than probably we should have. So open up a whole new can of worms. Okay, well, I don't remember, Michael, do we make a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
I'll second that.
Okay, who first did it?
You did.
Oh, okay, I made that motion. Okay. First and a second. Mike, you want to start?
Dinsmore, aye.
Andy,
Palmer, aye.
Mark, you're with us too. Welcome.
Yep, Hauser, aye. Thank you.
You bet. And Randy?
Meyer, aye.
And Spriggs, aye. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate, Rick, as always, we appreciate your efforts and all you do and your expertise. We realize that we have a huge asset with you being there with us, so we appreciate
We
that.
are nothing without you, Rick.
That's right.
Well, that's getting a little thick, but okay. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
See you guys.